Here we go. Big Ange to Tottenham, absolutely confirmed. And if his welcome song isn't Big Ange comes from a land down under, you better run, you better take cover by the workmen, then there is absolutely something wrong and I need to get me in on the PR team at Tottenham Hotspur. But as you can see, we are joined by the one and only Mr. Kaniki, also Sean Butler from Spurs Talk Show, to have a good discussion and on all things Ange. We will also be hosting a fan show for you guys, doubling down on the content for you guys out there to come on and have your say on Big Ange as well. As we're well aware, not everybody's opinion may be represented in today's discussion, so come on the fan show if it's not and represent that opinion. But Jacko, good to have you back. How are you, my man?
Doing okay, Dave. How many big Anges are we going to be hearing from the panel today? Everybody put your bets in. It could be multiples. It could be in the 20s, 30s, at some stage, maybe even halfway through the show. I'm kind of shocked and I'm sort of relieved, to actually be headed into this sort of summer with, still not that managerial saga to think about. The Nuno days were really, or at least that summer, were torture to sort of just continue to ponder about who Spurs we're going to get. I guess no matter where we'll fall on this sort of debate later about whether we're satisfied or unsatisfied with Ange Postecoglou, I guess we have avoided sort of in some way, that big managerial saga, and it's finally come, to some sort of conclusion here. It is kind of crazy though, because we did start out with giving Big Ange, a big red X. Dave, we actually thought he had no chance of getting the Spurs job originally when we put out our managerial video way back in the day. We thought it was, I think, Amorim, Pochettino, and like Tuchel, were like sort of the guys that maybe were the best chance of, coming over to Spurs. And look where we've come now. It's definitely been a long road, and I guess it's ended with Postecoglou.
Yeah, it's ended with Postecoglou. Look, we put a big X on it originally because, some of the names we were being linked with, we didn't think that Tottenham would go for him. But look, maybe it's a discussion we'll get into a bit later on. That is he actually B or C choice? So we'll get into that in a little bit of a while, Jack. Very interesting. But Shawnee, how are you, my man?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Good to be back with you guys. Listen, you can have your Down Under song for the season for the Premier League, but when it comes to the Carabao Cup, just like back in the 90s when we had the Ozzy Ardiles song, we're going to be singing, we're all having a Barbie, we're all having a Barbie, we're all having a Barbie when Big Ange wins the cup. When Big Ange wins the cup, when Big Ange wins the cup, we're all having a Barbie, we're all having a Barbie, we're all having a Barbie when Big Ange wins the cup. That is going to be the FA Cup Carabao Cup song for me, and I absolutely cannot wait. I'm excited about this one. I had manager fatigue, boys. So, like, I was over the search, I was over the rejection. I like this guy. He's warmed. I've warmed to him. He's won me over. The more I watch about this guy, the more I think that he's going to be the guy that gets us back in the right direction, get us back onto a good level playing field, playing some good football. And I'm happy with it.
No, 100%. Look, it's exciting times, it is exciting times. And that's, it's, to be fair, we'll get into it and we are going to break some of the news for you, but it is more or less what fans asked for when Antonio Conte was in charge. Someone that will come in and play to our strengths, which is our forward line, someone that will come in and play attacking football, which is something Tottenham Hotspur have always been known for. And also a lot of, people who have been disillusioned with Levy and want Levy out and stuff like that, A lot of people have come out and said, well, even if he's here, we still want to see a team that's playing attacking football. So I do think it maybe, pays to what the fans want on many levels. So, look, the next few days will be very, very interesting. Just a couple of things before we get into some hot topics. We will be running a Twitter React show tomorrow as well on the Ange appointment. So if you come across anything good, anything funny, or anything you think me and Jack should be aware with, please tag us in it on Twitter, and we'll make sure to try and get a reaction to that tomorrow. Also, make sure there's already 221. You guys are really excited out there. It's a shame we don't have any barbecues raring here today beside us, but I'm sure we can arrange a barbecue stream someday. Jack loves barbecuing and all that sort of stuff, so we can get him on the barbie. But guys, please make sure you smash that like button, make sure you smash that subscribe button. We are, I think, 64 away from actually reaching 10K. So let's see if we can get the job done today before I actually head away for a week with the Outland. Let's try and send me away happy to get to 10K. But also feel free to engage with us throughout this conversation in the chat. We'll get as many of them on screen as we can. We'll start some that we can bring into the conversation as well. But if you really want to make your point heard, stand out, etc., feel free to get in a super chat, help your boys out with everything we do here. But also make sure it's guaranteed that we can't miss it and we discuss it regardless whether you agree with us or disagree. No problem. We're all adults here and we can all have genuine conversations on it. And the more discussion we have on it, I think the better. But look, Jacko, over to you, sir.
We have Moondog already, though, nice and early in the house, saying, good evening, Dave and Jack. And Moondog, I tried to ask you in the chat there. Let me know, my friend, is this a good birthday present? A little late birthday present from Spurs, the likes of Ange Postecoglou. Has your dinner plans changed as well, Moondog? Maybe were you thinking about ordering the pizza? No longer can you get the pizza. You got to get in the Barbie. And then Gregor is in the house as well. I'm looking for a comment from Gregor, Dave. Were you able to spot one?
I think this is the guy that follows me everywhere and he wants me to get the mullet. That's all he's going to say. Dave, get the mullet. You might realize one of these days, Ange Postecoglou in charge, mullets might become fashionable now. So I might even go and get one. Who knows, my man? And also, Moondog, big yourself up, brother. Hopefully you enjoyed the birthday weekend. I know you went away with the family, so hopefully you enjoyed that. And really appreciate the clock as well, brother. I'll get it at the end of the stream. I'll show it up to people. Big up, my man.
Legend. And we're going to start first with kind of the Fabrizio Romano news that has come out. And it says Postecoglou will become new Tottenham head coach. Here we go. Personal terms agreed. Green light on final clauses. Time to seal compensation documents with Celtic. Then official. And I believe it's kind of been made even more official by the likes of Gary Jacob, because I've seen something from him at least recently before he went live saying that Spurs have agreed some sort of compensation package for Celtic for him to go on over to the likes of Spurs. So I expect I think we basically have gotten the here we go. Do we get like a double here we go, Dave? I think we're going to get maybe an extra here we go probably at some stage tonight, I think in some shape or form. But it does look like before Postecoglou heads out on vacation, maybe he is going to get the full sort of, documents and everything, sort of sealed off with Spurs and Celtic.
Yeah, look, Jack, I was texting around people saying yesterday it's the worst kept secret in football. You only have to look at it. Tottenham hired Scott Munn. He worked for the City Group. So did Ange Postecoglou out in the J-League at the time. Our first preseason tour game against West Ham is in Australia. It didn't take a genius to actually work out what direction it was going to go in, especially over the last few days. And anyone that watched the build up to the Celtic Cup final or even after it when Ange was speaking, he refused to sort of clarify his future, which sends out the sort of warning shots that this was about to happen. You could see it written all over him when he's lifting the cup, walking around at the end. It looked like a guy to me that was taking it all in for the last time. Now, I know Derek's out there. Derek, you did say to me, Dave, are you a face reader? Well, guess what? I guess I qualify as a face reader now, my man. Yes, I am a face reader. It was written all over his body at the weekend. And look, I'm happy with the appointment, Jack. I remember saying at the time with Scott Munn being appointed, I would not be surprised to see Ange Postecoglou come in here. And it has happened. Look, compensation isn't really going to be too much. We're probably talking in around 5 million, if even. He's on a 12-month rolling contract at Celtic. So there's going to be minimal sort of compensation sort out there, which will suit Daniel Levy, because according to reports, we pulled out of Arne Slot for that reason, because the excessive compensation fee. So I'd say this one, 1,000% is going ahead, and you probably get an announcement tomorrow. You won't see one tonight, I don't think, because tomorrow they'll want to get all the media stuff in place, press conference, images and stuff like that. So I hedge my bets. You'll get the club announcement tomorrow.
Shawnee, it's here we go time. Thoughts on Postecoglou? Satisfied? Underwhelmed? Is this, something what the fan base should even be debating in the first place? Whether they're satisfied or underwhelmed? What do you stand on it?
I stand very firmly next to Ange. I'm with him. I'm looking forward to seeing good football. I really like what I've read and seen about him. I loved your breakdown. You two, I have not actually spoken to you, Jack. I've spoken to Dave about it, and I've mentioned it on my channel 2 or 3 times. The video you guys did about him a few days ago, I thought it was great. I then went and did my own sort of due diligence and watched all of the different kind of content that's out there about him. And I think the guy is exactly what we need. Yes, there's risks, right? Yes, there's unknowns, whether he's going to command the respect of some of the players who might, have hopes to play for bigger brands or whatever. But I look back to the times when Tottenham fans were at their happiest. And I've said this 1,000 times now. No one talks about one day ball. No one talks about George Graham ball, if you're old enough to remember that. No one, I don't think, will talk about Mourinho ball in 5-10 years' time. I don't think people are going to talk about Conte ball either. But I do think people will still talk about Martin Jol, Harry Redknapp, and Pochettino. And those were all unsuccessful periods. But they had us as a fan base excited about the transition from where we were into what we became. And it was built on good, exciting football. And the underlying common denominator was that the manager, all three of those managers, had good relationships with the press, had good relationships with the fans, and had good relationships with the players. And I feel like this guy is someone who's going to come in. And yeah, everyone's going to have a healthy sense of skepticism, a healthy sense of, cynicism to what's going on. But I think that Tottenham are not rock bottom, obviously. It's not that bad. But Tottenham, generally speaking, in kind of relativity, are looking like we're going backwards right now. And if this guy's role for me is, I know I made the song about, singing the song about having a party or Barbie when he wins the cup. Yeah. I don't really think that sort of stuff is really plausible. I don't know why I'm holding my hands up in the air, but I'm going to continue doing it anyway. I feel like it is for me, the kind of baseline for him is just to get us playing good football and re-push us into a sake. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah.
My internet's driving. Yeah, so I'll finish up, but just by saying, I think that his remit is to get us playing good football and to build a sense of optimism and get us going in the right direction again. I don't think he's going to win a trophy. I think the gap between Manchester City and everybody else is ridiculously hard. However, right now we're so far from a trophy that shouldn't be the priority. It should be about getting the team playing good football, getting us excited to be a Tottenham fan again, and to rebuild some optimism around the club. And
definitely. I was going to ask this question, Dave, that I was actually going to ask it as sort of a follow-up for Sean, but I'll ask it to you first, and then I'll ask it to Sean.
Sean can come back. So
when Sean gets back, I'll ask it to him. Do you understand where Spurs fans are coming from with the skepticism? Because like they had Mourinho, right? They had Antonio Conte, they had Pochettino. So do you feel like you understand where some Spurs fans are coming from, that this might look as a big step backwards or a bit of a letdown and everything? Or do you feel like they need to get behind, Ange a bit more?
Yeah, look, there's a number of things on this, Jack. Look, first of all, is he at the level of a Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, Pochettino? No, he's not. He's not at that level, Even Nagelsmann, people would argue that he's not at that level.
Out loud.
Oh, can you hear us now, Shawnee? You there? No.
Maybe try refreshing and coming back in.
Yeah, Shawnee, try refreshing and coming back in, my man. Try refreshing and coming back in. But yeah, look, Jack, for me, when you look at Ange Postecoglou, right, he's not that sort of name, but we got to have a bit of realization and realism where we are right now. We brought in win-now managers without providing them win-now squads, right? And it's just deteriorated over the last 4 years. So and there's only so many world-class managers in the game that are available to a club like Tottenham Hotspur that aren't already in a job. So, when fans are sitting there calling for all these managers out, this, that, and the other, eventually you're going to come to a point where an appointment is going to be underwhelming. However, it's underwhelming if you look at it as a sense like, how does he stack up to Conte and Jose, and he's only come from the Scottish League? I get that. But we're at the point now, Jack, where we need a rebuild, and we've got to look sort of past that, and we've got to look more into what these managers are actually offering and bringing to Tottenham. And the first thing we need to do at this club is change from that defensive style of football and change to an attacking team. We have to rebrand ourselves as that. We have to get back to that. Does Ange Postecoglou tick that box? Yes, he does. And we have to build back up to winning trophies. We have to build back up to doing it that way. And Ange Postecoglou has shown that even though clubs are at different levels in different leagues, he's shown everywhere he's been that he's your guy. He can do that. He can change the fortunes. And he doesn't need 70, 80, 90 million pound players like a Conte or a Jose would in every single position. And we were never, ever going to buy them for an Antonio Conte or a Jose Mourinho. Whereas Ange Postecoglou, he will look for players, and he already probably has the players identified. He'll bring them in. Look what he done at Celtic with some of the players from the Japanese league. Everyone balked. Everyone laughed at it, even Scottish fans. They walked in there, the best players in the league, without a mile. And for me, I get the underwhelmingness of the appointment, but look, you got to look at it also, Jack, and I made this point last week. Look at some of the managers that fans were talking for that they did want in here. Potter, plucked from Sweden. Done an all right job at Swansea, got his job at Brighton in the Premier League. You look at that guy at Brentford, for instance. He came over from, Midtjylland Brøndby, brought in as an assistant to work in and around Brentford, got his shot. He lasted in the Premier League. He's done well. Vincent Kompany, Anderlecht to Burnley, but fans were willing to give him a chance. So there's a lot of managers that fans were actually looking for that don't actually have the experience in the game overall, as Ange Postecoglou would have. And when you actually weigh up his experience to a lot of these guys, in terms of what these guys can offer and what Ange can offer, for me, Ange stands above all them sort of candidates. You've got to take age out of the equation. I get a lot of people want a guy that's young, that they can relate to, wears skinny jeans, got curls on top of his head, and, drinks weird lattes and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, age does not matter. It does not matter. You want a guy that is good enough for the job, and you want a guy that, could come in here and rebrand and rebrand the club and give the fans what they want. And someone like Ange will do that. That also suits the way the chairman wants to operate. And that's the harsh reality of where we're at. We can sit here and go, we want, go and get me Klopp, go and get me Guardiola, go and get me this guy, that guy, and everything else. But if they come in here and they demand players at a certain value that we're not going to buy, there's no point in keep going down to that route. You look back at some of our best managers, Jack. Martin Jol, he was Santini's assistant. Look what job he done at Tottenham. Harry Redknapp came in here. Not many predicted that the job Harry Redknapp would go on to do. Pochettino, he had experience at Southampton. We took a gamble on him. Look what he went to do. So what I'm trying to say is some of the uninspiring appointments over the past have actually been the best ones for Tottenham in the Premier League era. So, I'll be looking more in depth on Ange Postecoglou and what he can offer and his methods and everything else, rather than just looking at as a name, is he world class? Because the reality is, as fans, we've chased world-class managers out here, and the rest of them are in a job. So where do you want Tottenham to turn to?
I feel like you make a good point about some of the managers that there was probably less sort of that debate about whether we'd be satisfied or underwhelmed. It didn't feel like there was much of that debate with Vincent Kompany. It didn't feel like there was much of that debate with Xabi Alonso. It didn't feel like there was that much of a debate with other managers that we were linked with that, to a degree, don't have nearly as much experience. And then also as well, sort of have no sort of experience even for more than, a year or two in really top 5 leagues of any kind. Like that was definitely the case with Vincent Kompany, right? Like he sort of did okay in the likes of Belgium, but then has done exceptional, probably better than almost anyone could at Burnley. But it's only been a year of him doing that. So for us to sort of kind of jump on, that bandwagon, I guess so confidently is totally fine. But it feels like maybe we could meet Postecoglou with a similar type of energy, with a similar type of optimism, if we were showing Kompany, Xabi Alonso, some of these other inexperienced type of guys who also would come with question marks. Maybe we should also show them, I guess, or show Postecoglou, that similar type of faith and that similar type of that energy. Sean, what do you think? Like, do you feel like you understand where Spurs fans are coming from by being let down because of Pochettino, Mourinho, and Conte? Or do you feel like what David kind of said right there, that we've been linked with a lot of other managers that people were really excited about? Maybe we should be a bit more optimistic about Postecoglou.
Yeah, I think it's also, once again, like we don't know how sincere the links were to Nagelsmann. We don't know about Slot.
That's true.
Not that Slot has that much more experience at top end. But I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. I feel like the media doesn't do Tottenham fans any good at all when they put spurious clickbait headlines linking us with the best players in the world that are entirely unrealistic. And then Tottenham fans, and I understand why they do it, but they set this, that's it now. Once you see a headline, Tottenham linked with Guardiola, Tottenham linked with Nagelsmann, Tottenham linked with Bastoni, whatever it is, nobody else is then good enough, even though the standard that like the standard bearer then is well outside of reality. And you know, it's like going into a strip club, going into Stringfellows, and then spending money and seeing some ridiculously hot bird and thinking that that's it now. I walk outside and I can go and get, because that girl gave me attention, I can go and get those, like a girl of that level anywhere else in the, in any normal bar in London. It's unrealistic. And I think that maybe Tottenham fans need to figure out that maybe this is our level at the moment. We've tried big managers and they haven't worked out for one reason or another. The managers don't get what they want from the owner. The owner's not prepared to back, or if he does get involved, he steps on toes in transfers. And Tottenham ultimately are out of Europe. We look like a big club, but really, when you go beneath the surface, we're actually a bit of a shambles. A lot of good managers don't particularly wouldn't want to touch us. Those that are out of work anyway, and those that are in work, why would they leave where they are to come to Tottenham? So I think that maybe we should just recognise that Postecoglou or someone of that level is probably where we're at for this part of our journey. And then hopefully Postecoglou can take us back to the area where we can then re-establish a baseline on the way that we play football, get us into good positions over the next 2 or 3 years. And then when he moves on, everyone's more aware of where Tottenham are going. We're in the right direction. And then you can go and attract the next manager that maybe is back to that level that we think that we're capable of. But for me, I'm very happy with Postecoglou. I think we shouldn't turn our noses up to him. I think we are a little bit snobbish as a fan base, and I think that this guy is just what we need right now.
I would be a bit of a hypocrite, just quickly, Dave. I would be even a bit of a hypocrite myself if I were to be completely turning my nose up at Postecoglou, because I had said in the past that whichever manager takes this job, it's a very tough job that they're taking. It's not a glamorous one of any kind. They're taking on a massive rebuild. They're taking on what is basically a job where they're going to have to get their hands dirty in a lot of ways, sort of dealing with the ownership, dealing with a fractured fan base, dealing with a fractured squad, dealing with a lot of sort of things that aren't exactly showing any sort of stability at the time. And, not many managers might not be keen on that, right? They got to be really up for it. They got to be really ambitious and willing to take on, right, a difficult job. And of course, he's probably going to be well compensated for it. But we've seen managers in the past, at Spurs that maybe weren't as enthusiastic about taking on the difficult sort of task that is Tottenham Hotspur. So you could maybe get some sort of satisfaction in that. Maybe Ange Postecoglou might be more enthusiastic. I'm only speculating, but maybe he might be more enthusiastic in trying to take on this job, with two hands, and being able to take on it with sort of full embrace and, full sort of kind of commitment to turn everything around, because it's not an easy one. You have to, in a way, you're almost a bit of a fool to take it, because it's going from what is very stable job at Celtic, where he's built something very, kind of great there and, really, powerful in uniting the Celtic fan base back together. And then he's taking on a much harder job where he's going to have to sort of do more or less the same thing, but in front of the Premier League and in front of much bigger sort of attention and social media pressure, etc.
But like the thing is with Ange as well, this is the thing. We needed someone that wants to roll their sleeves up and get stuck in, understands the work ahead. They're not afraid of it, and they want to give it their all to sort of change it. Rather than, like everyone was saying, under Jose and Conte, you don't want a manager that thinks they're too good to be here, that thinks they're doing the club a favour. And also, when you look at Jose and Conte, as much as I like them, it's sort of grated on me that they only used to mention the last 23 years of our history. Ange Postecoglou won't do that. When you sort of mention that, already sort of, when you think back about, already put sort of a dark cloud over the club when they're coming in, mentioning that sort of history. Ange Postecoglou will mention the 84 side. Ange Postecoglou will mention the 81-82 side. Ange Postecoglou will mention the double winning side in the 60s and stuff like that, and he'll make sure that people around this club are actually aware of the long outstanding history of Tottenham Hotspur. And I think that's important. And then he'll pose the challenge to his players. If you want to be talked about like these guys, go out there and do it. This is your platform. Go out there and do it. And for me, that'll be a nice, refreshing change around here where we're actually told about our history. We're actually, manager talks about some of the great players that we've had at this football club rather than just talk about the negative side of the history for the last 23 years. And I'm not trying to say it doesn't exist. Of course it exists, and you can't ignore it. And I get that Conte and Jose probably address that because they want to change it. But it'd just be refreshing for me to hear about, our club in positive light for once. Everything about this football club has been negative, everything about it in terms of transfer windows, managers' appointments are, people talking about the last 23 years of our history. I'm not talking about Spurs fans. They're within their right. But any other rival fan that talks about us, they only talk about us as bottlers, as losers. They don't even acknowledge that we have history before. The first team to win a double, first team to win a European trophy from England, this, that, and the other. No one really talks about that, and it pisses me off. And at least Ange will come in and it'll sort of change how Tottenham are talked about. He'll also change how Tottenham are talked about in the media, in my opinion. And I personally find that refreshing, rather than constantly being reminded by guys that, 23 years we haven't won anything. We get it. We're living it. We're living it every single day. But you're here to change that. There's no reflection. They never sort of said, oh, we want to emulate the 84 winning side. There was none of that. It was just always sort of spinned in a negative way to try and get reaction out of people, whereas Ange will spin it in a good way to still try and get a reaction out of people.
Yeah. Sean, I mean, another just quick thing I'll ask you, and then we get to some comments of people in the chat here. Do you like the fact that it's not seen as a step down at all for Ange? It's probably right. For him, it's a step up, or at least a step in a direction where he knows he's taking on a difficult job. And like I said, he's enthusiastic. You would probably think about it versus maybe a Mourinho and others who came off at least as a bit reluctant.
Oh, you there, Shawnee? No.
Well,
Shawnee, do you want to try and log out and log back in, my man?
His career's not. He might be 58 or whatever, but for him, it's his first chance at the big time. Oh, for fuck's sake!
No, you're back now. You're back now.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
I think he's going to log back in. Why Shawnee's logging back in, Jacko? We'll take some of these super chats.
Big up to Roy. Big up to Roy here. He's saying, good day, lads. My favorite three streamers on today. Waiting to get your thoughts. I think you've heard some good thoughts from us three thus far, hopefully, Roy, and it's appreciate your support, my man. And we've been kind of taking a bit of a break at this weekend, but we're coming into it with full force with the likes of Ange Postecoglou. Big weeks ahead this summer. He's taken on a very difficult job indeed. Big yourself up, my man. And then also we have the likes of Michael, Dave, celebrating 13 months as a fan show member. Michael out in Poland, and he says, I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit underwhelmed just because he is not a well-established name, but I'm extremely happy we have a gaffer now at least. Hashtag Dyer out. Enough is enough.
And again, you know what? I hear that. And look, with Ange Postecoglou, like every other manager before him, it relies on him making the right decisions in terms of personnel he wants to keep around, that he feels he can trust with his life. It makes also about him being back to the right degree. And what I mean by that is in certain areas, but also learning from mistakes that when things have maybe gone wrong in the past, we've sacked managers. Now it's about learning from that. You stick through that rocket period and you go, okay, have we... I can understand if you go, for instance, we keep conceding goals. That's what's killing us in games. Do we sack the manager? Have we done anything in that area? And the answer has been no, but they've continued to sack managers and sack managers. So under Ange Postecoglou, I hope, because there will be some sticky points. But you've got to stick through that to come out the other end and just continue to back them, because they'll initially back them.
Yeah.
But it's what you do after that. And for me, it's about continually backing this guy and give him what he needs, Michael. I hear what you're saying about him not being a Mourinho and an Antonio Conte, but the reality is, outside of Pochettino, outside of Conte, outside of Jose Mourinho, you're looking at Klopp, you're looking at Guardiola. They're bought in jobs and they ain't leaving anytime soon. And, this is what I was trying to warn people of back at the time. Once these guys go, you are going down to a lower caliber of manager. However, like Sean alluded to and like Jack has alluded to, this is sort of where we're at. We need to not rebrand, but we need to, re-energize this whole football club. And someone like Ange, he's humble enough to be that guy to be able to do it, in my opinion. But big up, Michael. Really appreciate the support. And look, hopefully you come on the fan show a bit later on to have a discussion with me, my man. And big up Roy Vixen. Hopefully you are enjoying our points as well. Loves music, says, in my opinion, this is a 5-year plan to get us consistent. Again, we love music. We will be talking about that because it has only been a 2-year contract. And I hear what a lot of people are saying about and the skepticism and the worry about that. but I also have maybe a little bit of a different team for people to consider on that. So we'll get to that, but I do hear you on that, my man. Be interesting to see whether that is the case or not with Ange. This is what everybody wanted. It's what all the fans wanted. So hopefully that is the case, my man. Big up Loves Music. And he also says,
Yep. Jose and Conte
Jose
won
and
nothing
Conte
with
won
us.
nothing with us.
What's to lose now?
Exactly. Well, Sean, we'll let you come in on this, my man. We'll give your internet a test run. Loves Music says Jose and Conte won nothing with us. What have we got to lose by bringing in someone like Ange?
Yeah, as I say, I've been saying it as well. I feel like it's a free hit for him, and it's a free hit for us. Like, we've struggled with all of our last appointments. The football's been miserable. We haven't had success anyway. For me, I feel differently to a lot of fans who think that it's win trophies at all costs. I don't. I think that the four, like the cornerstone of a Tottenham Hotspur football club that I want to watch is good football, and this guy does that. It's his basic. He says he doesn't own a bus, so that's why he can't park the bus. Yeah, the kind of phrases coming out brilliant. Look, I don't think there's I think it seems like it's a perfect relationship for where we are right now, for where he is. He wants that next step up. He's done basically everything that he can do at Celtic. I don't think he can win a cup, like a European Cup there in all likelihood. So, it's a mission complete for him there. It's well overdue a chance to at the next stage up. Tottenham seem like a perfect club for him. The fans, I think, will get behind him. I do worry a little bit, like if it's a bad start, if we lose our opening 3 games or something like that, then what happens? Does everyone start to panic? I'd urge everyone patience. I'd urge everyone gives the guy the chance, but I don't really foresee it happening. I foresee him coming in and, like I say, Celtic fans are they're not idiots. They're not at all. They know their football and they're very passionate. And I've never seen any group of people talk about anyone in football the way that they talk about him.
They love
the devotion they have to him is fascinating, and it's amazing to see. And I think it speaks volumes. So for me, I think, like I said 1,000 times now, I think it's the right fit for both parties here. The one thing I do want to call out, not that I want to derail the conversation, but I've just seen a tweet from Gary Jacobs saying that Tottenham boss Ange Postecoglou has been told that he will have to work within his means in the transfer market after Conte tried to pressure the club to spend significantly. Like, it's already started, isn't it?
Well, then I really like this question from Big Up Loves Music, my man. And what I would say to, by the way, my friend, is that I really like Jose and Conte for a lot of different reasons. I didn't mind actually the style of play, but I'm actually excited to see some type of style of play that Spurs fans can actually all unite under. I'm kind of tolerant, I think, of a variety of different, styles. Sometimes I almost enjoy more watching just long balls up to a lone striker with no support behind him, on a muddy pitch. It's just, me being a bit of a sicko that way. But Loves Music, what I would say is, I think it is, sort of a free hit for Ange Postecoglou, kind of in a way. Like, I don't know if it exactly will damage his reputation too much. He's going into it with a lot of, I imagine, sort of, good kind of like vigor and enthusiasm to sort of take this head on. And maybe we didn't have that with previous managers. Potentially they saw it, like some people said, like as a bit of a step down. And I don't think he's going to see this as a step down at all. And then this was a good question, I thought, Sean, from Juicy. He says, do you all think Postecoglou is appointed because our board genuinely believe in him, or is it a cheap option? And with those sort of rumors, Sean, that you were just saying from Gary Jacob in mind, what would you say to Juicy? Do they have faith in him?
Look, I don't think he was our first option, right? I don't. And I would say this as well, like, Daniel Levy gets criticised for not articulating anything specific in any plans. Paratici got criticised for not saying anything specific when he came out and spoke about the plan. The first time they said something specific was in this search for a new manager, and they said they wanted someone young. And, Postecoglou's not young. He's young relatively in life, but he's not young compared to some of the football managers out there. And immediately people that don't want Postecoglou or are looking for a stick to beat Levy with are immediately pointing out that he's lied about the search for a young manager. And I just don't think that, like, that to me is exhibit A of why politicians don't give firm answers on anything, because you are damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, right? And I think that with Levy, I don't think it's necessarily the cheap option. I would go as far as to say it's the best option that was realistically available. I think maybe Daniel Levy had some conversations with people and didn't expect to get knocked back like he has probably been knocked back by a lot of people, right? Like all of the managers that we were linked with, they've all either signed new contracts or have come out and said, I'm not really interested. And so I think this is probably like by hook or by crook. I don't care how it happened. Like I'm happy with the appointment. And so do I think it's a cheap option? Yeah, it probably is a cheap option. But do I think that was the rationale for hiring him? No, I think the rationale for hiring him was like best we can get, probably at the moment, best and most realistic option. And I, you know, that tweet saying live within your means. I don't know what the means looks like, right? Like I'm sure there is a budget available. You'd hope that 50 million quid is still going to be available from the 150 that wasn't taken last year. You'd hope that any money from player sales gets put back in, and you'd hope that they can recognize the fact that, you know, that whilst we might not be in Europe this season, last season we went deep in competitions, plus all the concerts, plus all the other stuff that we do. Like there's a reason why we do all that stuff. It's to create the revenue streams that puts us in the top 5 or 6 most profitable companies in sports around the world. Like, let's see what that looks like this summer. And I think that if Daniel Levy is true to his word regarding a big rebuild, that's going to cost a lot of money. There's going to be expensive decisions around tearing up contracts. I hope that Daniel Levy is going to figure out a way to give Postecoglou what he needs, so that living within our means is actually what it's supposed to be, which is being one of the 5th most profitable club in world football, in world sports. Like our means should be substantial.
Yeah, and you would think our means would be, I think, capable of getting us almost any manager in here, but it seems like perhaps Levy is going for maybe an option that he knows is, I don't know. I think, Sean, you're right. I think he's kind of always been a plan B or a plan C. I think Postecoglou this whole time, I think they did really want to go after Nagelsmann. I do believe maybe they were convinced probably by Arne Slot and perhaps maybe somebody else, you know, that maybe just ended up just not being really capable, or they just felt like they weren't capable of bringing him in. And Postecoglou was somebody that they've been convinced by. I don't think they've not been impressed, but maybe he's just been on the back burner this whole time as just somebody that they knew was actually going to probably take the job, maybe when actually they came to him, you know, at some stage, and they were going to be able to get through the negotiations a bit easier. And perhaps maybe they even had a deadline. They knew about the whole Nuno 72 days, whatever it was, right, without a manager. And once sort of the season ended, maybe it's possible that they did set some sort of deadline on like, well, if we don't have Nagelsmann or Slot in, it's Postecoglou, trigger it, do it at all costs, bring him in here. Or maybe it wasn't even like Postecoglou. It could have been an Enrique or whoever they were at least, you know, convinced by as like the plan C. I'm probably convinced what you said. He's like a plan C or plan B of some sort for Spurs. How much faith does a plan B get, Dave?
Look, for me, I think... Look, this is the thing. It's sort of like I think the board like the guy, and I think they want to give him an opportunity because they like what he's about, and I think they believe he can bring that to Tottenham Hotspur. But you know, this isn't an unusual situation for Ange Postecoglou to be in. When he signed for Celtic, there was a massive overhaul there that needed to be done. He had to transform the football, and he had to transform the squad from a very aging squad to a younger, hungrier squad that was more mobile, that could play the way he wanted. And, you know, he was able to do that. And you could sit here and say, well, did the Celtic hierarchy have any faith in him being able to do that? Because they put him on a 12-month rolling contract. And even when he won the double, they put him on another 12-month rolling contract. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is Ange Postecoglou is no stranger to this position where media, fans, even you would like to say the board level at clubs, maybe have a bit of skepticism. But the reality is he's gone on to prove everyone wrong every single time. Why can't he do that at Tottenham Hotspur? Why can't he change our fortunes around a little bit rather than us sliding down the league? Why can't he come in here, get us playing the right sort of football and put us up the top of the league and have us talk about this, that, and the other? And look, it's hard to say that Daniel Levy had full backing behind the guy. It's hard to say that because the reality is, you know, Poch would have been their first option, only they don't want to bring him back because they know they're under pressure from the fans, as is to deliver. You bring Pochettino back, that shows that the last 4 years is an admittance of guilt, then you're in an untenable position. They went in for Arne Slot, and they didn't want to pay the compensation fee for the guy. They could have went and got Amorim, but they didn't want to pay the 30 million it would take to get him out of Sporting. I reckon, you know, Nagelsmann, sort of Tottenham probably went and spoke to him, but I don't think there was that much interest there from the very off, to be honest with you, on Nagelsmann's side of things, especially in terms of recruitment, this, that, and the other. So for me, it's hard to sit here and say the board have full 100% backing in them, because I don't think they're doing anybody. Because if they did, they would have paid the 15 to 20 million that it would have took to get Arne Slot out. For me, I don't think they just don't want to outlay that much more on a manager. I think it was about trying to get in a manager that does the right thing, but also that's not going to demand a heavy proportion out of your transfer budget.
We did learn in the past from that Talk Sport interview from, I forget that former scout's name who did that interview with the likes of Simon Jordan and Jim White. But I believe he said Pochettino, right, didn't even have the initial sort of trust from Daniel Levy whatsoever. It was sort of about Pochettino proving himself to Daniel Levy before he was kind of given any sort of opinion on sort of when can you spend and what sort of players can we bring in. It was about kind of the trial run, sort of like a test run, about whether he's going to be able to fit the bill, whether he can swim. And we did learn that in that case of Pochettino, where even though Pochettino turned out to be practically the best manager of my lifetime at Spurs, who didn't exactly have that initial faith from the case of Daniel Levy. And plenty have even reported that he was also a bit of a plan B, right? Or a plan C, Pochettino too. And he ended up having to sort of prove himself to everybody, really. And he did it. And Postecoglou is going to have to sort of do the same here. And we'll see if he can, it's sort of, I guess, in some way, kind of build on, you know, what was a big mountain to climb like Pochettino had to. I think it's similar circumstances, like in a lot of ways, to when Pochettino came from Southampton. Colin Talking Ball saying Papa Post or Papa Post.
Papa Postecoglou. Yeah, Postman Postecoglou. He might fit in the van with Pedro Porro. Who knows, man? Big yourself up. Really appreciate the support, Colin. Hopefully things are well. Skinny Fat Huey says Scottish and Spurs, so I'm biased, but I am so buzzing. Look, I think many people are excited. This is the thing, my man, like Huey, that look, many people want, you know, sort of something fresh. We don't want to continue on with bringing another world class, you know, manager that's maybe plays defensive or pragmatic football, because the reality is, even in the more class managers, there's only so much to play the football that Spurs fans want seeing played at Tottenham Hotspur. And unfortunately, they're already in clubs. So for me, you know, and I think actually Ange is a much better manager than what people give him credit for. You know, this guy is, because of purely where he's from and, you know, where he's had his football, you know, schooling out in Australia, there's always going to be that knock against his name. There's always going to be that slight against his name, because it's not Postetici, it's not Posterman, it's not, you know, Postecoglou or something exciting like that. You know, it's none of that. It's just Postecoglou from Australia. So people don't get that initial buzz, that initial excitement. But he'll get the fans on side. Do not worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, he could look into maybe getting some soy lattes, you know, maybe pictures of, you know, those, or maybe some skateboards and things like that, you know, just to appeal to the young folk like myself. But big yourself up, Skinny Fat Hugh. I bet you're absolutely buzzing. I know Paul Hotspur is buzzing. There are a lot of people who really do love Ange. He definitely does have a sort of a big army behind him. For people who definitely just feel like he's been underrated, right? There's a big sort of divide between people who think he's not really ready for this job, and people who feel like he's been ready for this job sort of his whole life, right? And he's been, you know, ready to seize this sort of moment and get this sort of big opportunity. And so it's kind of an interesting divide, that's for sure. Rashad Chowdhury saying not worth having anyone if Levy doesn't back them. I feel like I'm going to be the, you know, the bringer or the breaker of bad news here, but like, you know, what Sean brought up earlier with the Gary Jacob thing, with the transfer market being that he's not going to get as much of the money that maybe Antonio Conte got with 150 million. He's going to be asked to maybe work with certain players of the squad, probably coming back from loan and whatnot. He's not going to get really everything right away that he wants. And it might be a bit similar, like we were saying earlier, to when Pochettino first came here, where Pochettino really wasn't given all that much trust or faith in the first place. He sort of had to earn it kind of later on. So I think, Rashad, you could be right, you know, with the fact that maybe Levy isn't sort of going to be showing Postecoglou maybe as much faith as he probably had maybe with previous managers, even if you thought he did show any faith at all, you know, to previous managers.
Yeah. Big up, Rashad. Look, you know, every manager relies on a certain amount of backing, continuing to be back this while, especially through hard times. Will we do that or not? The last 4 years proved no. But look, let's wait and see what happens. But also, I will say this just quickly, because we do have more questions we want to get into, and we have more questions we want to throw Sean's way as well. It's just, the fans also have to show a degree of patience here as well. As much as we say we want the board to back them, this, that, and the other, the fans are now at a point where we have to show patience. We can't keep rocking up to that stadium, making sure we make it known that we want managers out every time things go badly. It can't keep happening like that. At some stage, you've got to recognize we are where we are. Look, I'm one of them. I've had to be brought down to reality. You have to recognize we are where we are. There's plugs and that need to be filled. And, until we get that done, you're never really going to see the true potential of a Tottenham Hotspur under any manager. So, it is up to the fans now that when times do get tough, it's that you stick with him. You sing the manager's name even louder. You make it known you want that continued investment in the manager, rather than straight away just turn and start, boom, we want this guy out, we want that guy out. Because it's a huge concern of mine on this end. If people done it to Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte and Nuno, they'll do it to this guy even quicker. So for me, fans, you have to weigh it up in your head. Are you willing to give this guy patience? We all said when the next manager that comes in here, we have to give patience. We have to give time. Well, I hope everyone's still saying that now.
Big up Rashad Chowdhury. Scott Malkinson saying it's 25 degrees centigrade at the moment. It's absolutely hot out there. So everybody, if you're staying cool indoors, and if you are watching the stream, do hit that like button for us if you have been enjoying it thus far. And also big shout out to Ellie. I'm seeing her and plenty of other good people in the house, everybody. So keep getting your comments in. And Donovan Osterreicher has come up with a new song for us here. Sean, he says, "Wake me up before you go. Who needs Poch when you got Postecoglou?"
Not bad. Donovan. I think there needs to be a few kinks ironed out on that, but not bad.
Good start, says Davo. And then Mia's in the house as well. Big up, Mia. Thank you for joining us. She says, big up. It feels like it's been a while. And Ange, we trust. Get the shrimp on the Barbie and the ouzo out. Ouzo out. What's the ouzo?
It's like a Greek liqueur.
Ooh.
It is.
It's like Sambuca, I think.
Celebratory. I like it.
It's horrible. Yeah. It's horrible.
It's
horrible. Honestly, it is horrible. I remember I was working in the hotel, and some girl from Bulgaria brought me some ouzo for a Christmas night out. And let's just say the night out didn't go according to plan, because I don't remember much of it. It's absolutely lethal.
I like the grappa. I believe the Italians, they have a bit of grappa. I don't mind that, after a meal. It's sort of like a good sort of palate cleanser. So, I'm with you there, Mia. And absolutely get the shrimp on the Barbie. It probably just have barbecue for the whole week is maybe what we should probably be canceling all our dinner plans. And it probably has been a while. I think I went over to a cousin's wedding. I think Dave just, needed time off after, a difficult season. And we're coming back onto it, head on as always. Pick yourself up, Mia. Phil P's in the house as well, saying hashtag Greek boy summer, hashtag Greek boy hot summer, with a hint of Irish from Celtic. Big yourself up, Phil P. This guy, to be honest, Sean, he's always keeping in shape. Phil P. He's always on a run somewhere.
He's the best looking man in the community, I think. Yeah, he's a gorgeous guy. Gorgeous.
He knows the meaning of hot Greek boy summer. He knows the meaning of it for sure. This guy, he's got the good genes. He's got the good genes, Phil P. Big yourself up, my man. And I'm actually going to start that this summer as well. The moment that June hit, I've started hitting the stairs, going up and down the stairs. That's sort of my workout routine until I basically pass out. And then I just walk myself miserably home afterwards, Phil P. Big yourself up, my man. And with Howie Ice as well. Looking for a comment from yourself, Howie. If I don't see it, yes, he says great commentary and insights from the three of the best. But Jack, please save the singing for the karaoke night. I think honestly, people just really hope that I never have to sing when anything is put out there. They usually prefer Dave's voice or Sean's voice, but I had to clear the vocals, every now and again. But appreciate it, Howie. And yeah, honestly, I'm probably the last pick, when it comes to any sort of karaoke team. Probably the last pick usually. Pick yourself up, my man. Sean, I have a question for you. Just, getting back into sort of, the whether Postecoglou can take this job or not. How do you think he'll be able to handle coming up against some of the best tacticians? Guardiola, Unai Emery playing that ridiculously high line and offside trap, randomly on people. How do you think he can handle just coming up against, basically top minds, on a consistent basis? It's very different from the Scottish League in that regard.
Yeah, it is. Look, and it's an unknown. People say that he's a one-trick pony. He's only got a plan A, and maybe so. What I would say, like, I don't know how it's going to work out. I answered this question last night on We Are Tottenham TV. What I would say is I'm not that worried about how we fare against the likes of Pep Guardiola or against the likes of, Jurgen Klopp next season. Like, for me right now, I want us just to treat this season as the experiment and the rebuild that it should be, and we'll see what happens there. But my expectations are unknown really around how he's going to handle it. He strikes me as the sort of guy that levels up. Wherever he touches, he figures it out at the level. He hasn't failed yet. So let's see what he does at this next level. I'm sure he is smart enough to be able to get creative, to get innovative with his tactics. I'd also say that, when people worry about how we're going to handle them, I'd also remind people that, like, they've got to handle us, right? They've got to figure out how to play against Ange. And, that will be interesting, right? He's got his own style. He's going to have his own methodologies. Let's hope that he can put the pieces into the jigsaw to get the players that help him with the system that he wants to play. And, it's going to be an experiment. I don't know whether he's going to be able to take on the best tacticians, but as I say, he hasn't failed at anything he's done yet. He just hasn't tried it at this next level. But if you look at his history, he's always worked it out. So he'll be able, I have faith that he'll be able to work this one out as well, to a degree.
With what you just said though, Sean, like the fact that he's got to be also figured out, like they have to figure out us as much as we have to figure out them. Do you feel like certain managers like De Zerbi and people like that have benefited from sort of like just breaking into the Premier League? Nobody really knows much about them. So then their tactics, right, are a bit sort of new, or like some of the things that they, might instruct their players to do, or, maybe the Premier League just hasn't seen before, hasn't seen in a few years. So it catches people off guard, right? Even Antonio Conte's sort of back three, right, was sort of, everybody was thrown off by that. And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, everybody's playing a back three. But now, everybody's sort of going back to a back four again. It feels like after Arteta and, these sort of guys. And do you feel like Postecoglou, he could catch people by surprise, like you're saying?
I think he could. And look, I see a lot of the people in the comments that are kind of a little bit more on the fence, or a little bit more kind of like underwhelmed by this appointment. And they're saying things, not just in these comments, in other comments as well, saying things like, how's Ange going to play a high line? Yeah, how's Ange going to play a high line with Eric Dyer and Sanchez? How's he going to be able to? How are we going to get anything without Harry Kane? And it's always like looking through the optics, assuming that the worst things are going to happen with Tottenham. Like, we're not going to improve on our back line, or that if we don't have Harry Kane, then we're not going to replace him with other people. Like, we don't know what squad we're going to be working with, and who's going to be here, who's not going to be here. And so I feel like at the moment, everyone's making these suppositions and hypotheses based on like looking through it with a glass half empty. And I just don't think that's necessarily reasonable. I think we should just wait and see what the squad looks like before we start to analyze whether or not he's going to be able to compete with, because we don't know if Harry Kane's here, then it's a different answer than if Harry Kane's not. If we go and sign Tapstober from Leverkusen, it's a different answer than if you don't sign anyone and you've got Eric Dyer next season. Like, we don't know what the squad's going to be. But I imagine that we're going to have a better all-round squad next summer or next season than we currently do. The only kind of negative is maybe Harry Kane leaves, but we'll adapt. We'll be fine. We'll figure it out. We always do.
On that, I want to say, I get people concerned about, how exposed we might be across that back line or the high line and that, and I get it. But, you got to take what Sean says on board 100%, Like, that's if we're persistent with a Dyer, with a Sanchez and stuff like that. It's, it's sort of, but, regardless of who was coming in next, we all knew they needed defenders, I just find it ironic that, we tried highlighting the back line under Antonio Conte and how bad it is. And now all of a sudden everyone's concerned about the back line. I mean, it's absolutely madness. It's sort of like, we got to understand, we have to improve this back line. We cannot go into another season where we're conceding the same amount of goals as teams that have got relegated have. We can't continue with that. And also, with Big Ange, he sort of alluded to this on one of his interviews after the Scottish Cup final. Someone asked him about his tactics and all. He said, look, in principle, my philosophy stays the same. What I ask of my players, like the hard work, being, grounded, this, that, and the other, the dedication, that all stays the same. But, I haven't been in this game this long if I haven't been able to adjust. And
Right.
that's the thing. What you see at Celtic, you probably see a variation of that at Tottenham with a tweak here or there to the style of tactics that he usually plays. He will adapt. In the Premier League, he's not stupid. He's had to adapt every single place he's gone. But also, many people are clamoring for, the guy at Brentford, he survived in the Premier League coming up from the Championship, who only managed in Denmark before that. Graham Potter, done well at Swansea. He survived in the Premier League to a certain degree. Vincent Kompany, many people are willing to give a chance to. He's never managed in the Premier League. He's only managed Burnley and Anderlecht. So, what I will say is maybe think a little bit differently on that, it's not a foregone conclusion that this guy isn't going to come in and be able to cut it up with the best in the world, because other managers that other people have been calling for, that being linked with the job that people will get behind, well, they survived in the Premier League with some of the best tacticians in the world. And some of them have a lot less experience than Ange, a lot less know-how than Ange, a lot less tactical nous than Ange. And also, they played Man City in a friendly, and they played them off the park. They dominated possession, this, that, and the other. So, look, this guy will be able to survive and handle it tactically. He done a Confederations Cup. He drew 3-3 with Holland. They had a World Cup. He was able to hold his own there as well. So for me, I don't really have that concern when it comes to how can he stack up against other managers in the Premier League, because the reality is as well, there's going to be more changes at other clubs next season in the dugout as well. So it changes, the landscape's constantly changing. So for me, I have no problems with it. When I hear the guy talking about, everything else stays the same, but I do change things tactically, it shows he's not stupid.
When I watched his Celtic team in the Champions League, from what I could gather is even when his team did fall short, there were absolute periods of play when they were all over the opposition, and times when they were just completely choking them out from any sort of chances, being created, but also just, firing shots galore sort of on goal at the opposition. And that was another thing I noticed kind of about Postecoglou's team, is that, to be fair, even if they're getting, beat 2-0, 3-0, they're probably going to still finish with maybe 12, 14 shots on goal, really. And they're still going to finish with some sort of sense that maybe, if we had this go our way, if maybe we had a touch, maybe, better in the final third, we could have actually gotten something out of this. Whereas in other games in the past, with Spurs, where, we're sort of cheering, for one shot on target. We're sort of cheering, for any sort of, maybe break in play to be able to go after it. And you wouldn't say that's going to be the case with, Postecoglou. Even if he does lose a game, it does feel like Spurs fans are going to be satisfied with, I feel like, what a lot of them have asked for, which is, even if we lose, I want us to feel like, we actually went after it in a positive sort of like on the front foot type of manner. And he is almost deliberately saying that in all of his quotes, over his sort of interviews about his philosophy and style of play, is that no matter who he comes up against, no matter what players he really has, he basically sees it the same way. You don't stop, and you continue to play forward, and you continue to basically go after them. He doesn't really cower away or sort of, turn scared to any sort of, you could say, manager or, opposition, or whether it's Messi that he's coming up against, he's still going to try to play basically the same way, in some sense. And you could call that naive, but in a way, I think that's what a lot of Spurs fans have actually kind of asked for, if I'm not mistaken, when Conte was here.
But also we have to, we have to understand tactics can only bring you so far. You also have to have the right players to play that right tactic. So it does come down to like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. So Postecoglou's man management and tactics will put us on a certain way. But it's up to the board then to implement the players that can play that certain way, and not bring them in here and say, we like what you've done at Celtic, we like the way you play, but you're going to have to adapt that, because you're going to have to work with certain players that are not technically good enough to play that way. And that's my concern about it. It's all well and good expecting him to come in and play this football, but you've got to provide the players to be able to play it, and you've also got to provide the back line to be able to play that high line system as well. Otherwise, there is no point. There's no point of even getting excited about his style of play if the players are not there to implement it. And we can sit here and say, he's going to get better out of certain players, this, that, and the other. That may be the case. But in reality, he's not going to get it out of all the players that we have, all the driftwood and that. And he is going to need help in the market to be able to implement it as well. So for me, it's all well and good getting excited about the tactics, but I can't really get too excited until I see another, more centre backs come in here, better defenders, and then after that, I can say, okay, we are looking to have a go. But I just think this whole thing that can he survive against other managers, I think it's horseshit. But like Sean said, it gives teams a new team to worry about. Us. All at Tottenham, it's well known right now. Go and press Tottenham, take the ball off them, higher up the pitch, you're going to get shots on goals. Well, when we change the way we play, all of a sudden teams are actually going to have to worry about our back line a lot more than what they needed to, or a lot more than what they were used to having to worry about it. So that asks them a different question altogether, and it's playing to our strength. So I'll actually caveat it. Will teams be able to handle our forward line? You put that back line in place, you stop some of the goals conceding, you're automatically in a position with the forwards we have, and this depends on keeping Kane, that you're going to win a lot more games than what we have done previous. So I'd actually change it that can other teams handle our forward line when our tactics and everything is geared towards them?
Our forward line has always struck fear in any team too, Sean, right?
100%. I completely agree with that. Like, if people have to worry about our forward line, then they can't necessarily just to throw all guns blazing at our defense. What I do think though is the improvement into the back line is essential, but the specific you need at least one player in the back line who has ridiculous pace. Now I said this on a video today. Like, we're linked with that with that Edmund Tapsoba. I don't think he's realistic, right? But that guy's 6'4", built like a brick shit house, and he's ridiculously good in the air, ridiculously good at passing, composed, but he's also blessed with obscene pace. And I think that we don't have a defender. If we're going to play with a high line, you need someone in the back four, whether it's the right back, the left back, or one of the two centre backs, to have electric pace to be able to get back and cover should the transition happen and you get
Tracker Rashford, like Eric Dyer couldn't, in that one goal that we conceded, right? That
exactly.
Situation.
You look at Kyle Walker, right? The reason why he did so well, he's gifted as a player, but the pace that he had, Manchester City could always have him just sitting on the halfway line. And in the scenario where a team does break, his pace could get them out of trouble so often. Tottenham at the moment don't have anyone with pace, which is why I think that, players like Clement Longley, now that you've got him coming in who wants to play a higher line, I don't think it makes any sense anymore to make the Clement Longley deal permanent, because he doesn't have the pace. Right. And so I also think that Sanchez, obviously I know we're going to go through the players on a different show, but like, I think you need to get a centre back that has a lot of pace to be able to ensure that you have the ability to get back should you get caught out in the transition.
100%. And just quickly, I don't want to hear anyone say, "Oh, Sanchez, let's find a new way for Sanchez to survive at Tottenham. He's got all the pace in the world." To forget about that. Realize how many times teams have put long balls in behind Sanchez and he's been able to fail with it. He gets confused when the ball is up in the air. So it's all well and good having pace, but when you don't know when you can't read the flight of the ball, it's absolutely non-existent to you. So let's not do it with a damage
pace alone. Pace alone is not enough. You need to have talent in all the other departments, but just also have the ability to run at pace when necessary. You can't just be a sprinter. Like Usain Bolt in the back line isn't going to help us. You need someone competent and who is all I'm saying,
Spot on. Absolutely spot on. Just quickly, Phil, we will be talking quickly about Harry Kane. I just want to talk about the 2-year contract thing as well. I think that's important, and many things people want to hear opinion on it. Before we get into that, though, I just urge everyone. We're like 40 odd away from reaching 10K subscribers. Now, I am going away tomorrow for a few days with Yow Lad, and I would love to be sitting there with a big grin on my face the whole way down with my Yow Lad going, "What you smiling about?" And then I just don't tell him, just wind him up a little bit. So if you want to make a man happy, feel free to share this out to everybody. Say these three boys are talking absolute sense when it comes to Ange Postecoglou and Tottenham. Share out wide to the Spurs fan base and get them all in here to subscribe. Make sure you're smashing that like button if you are enjoying it. And guys, feel free at any stage to interrupt the conversation or even join in the conversation and expand it with your opinions. You can do that via number way in the chat or via super chat, which really helps everything we do here. So if you want to be an aid to that, feel free to get in a super chat with your thoughts, your opinions. It's important you're also heard. And also, if you want to make sure, if you want to do something different and grab a channel membership, grab that fan show membership, because we will be running a fan show for people to come on tonight and air their opinions on Ange Postecoglou. So either or, you can go down them routes. But sorry, Jack, I'll back to you.
Rob Frank has done that, Dave.
He's done that, yeah.
He's become a fan show member. Rob, I hope to be speaking to you later, my man. We do have a little bit of time set aside for this evening. If anybody does want to have their sort of quick thoughts on the likes of this Ange appointment, everybody feel free to come on. Big up, Rob. Thanks for grabbing that membership. Hope to speak to you later, my man. And then also Rob Fuzzard, member of the Rob Army, says Postecoglou. Kind of,
I
we're
could get
getting
with that. Yeah, I could get
you
with
like that more than Papa
Postecoglou.
Post?
Yeah, I like hashtag Postecoglou. I do. I'm with that, Rob. Big up. I like that.
I liked Papa Post. I liked Papa Post. I could get down with the Papa Post. I
Yeah.
like Postecoglou. I like that, Rob. It's actually, something I didn't think could actually even be said out loud. I'm pretty impressed I was able to get it on the first try. I thought I would have fumbled up there. Big yourself up, my man.
I promise everybody by next week I'll have a full list of nicknames presented to you guys that we can use.
Question from Phil here, guys, and he says the style of play that Ange is, or Dave, you want to talk about the contract, you said, right?
Yeah, a lot of people just quickly have concerns over the 2-year contract with the option of a year extension. And they say it doesn't suggest long-term. It doesn't suggest, planning or vision, this, that, and the other. And I can get that. Right? But you got to look at it nowadays that clubs are protecting themselves. They're no longer handing out these 5-year deals to managers because of the amount of wages and everything else they're on nowadays, because they're not getting, they don't want to leave themselves in a position anymore where they're having to place managers on gardening leave and bringing another guy on top of that and pay his wages, this, that, and the other. So a lot of these 2-year contracts with, a year extension is the way you're going to see a lot of these appointments go. I think Pochettino got something very, very similar at Chelsea. And the only reason we're behind that is because you can have all this grandiose vision and these grandiose plans, but if something goes wrong 6 months down the line and that guy's lost the plot, you're locked in on a 5-year contract, and then you're sitting there having to, negotiate to try and pay his way out of that, this, that, and the other. It just becomes really messy. So you're going to see a lot of this from now on, but I also don't want to hear excuses on the other side of things from the club where it's like, well, he's only got 2 years. How far do we go? Or, this, that, and the other, because for me, that doesn't wash. This is the way football is going. This is the future. So it doesn't wash with me anymore. At the end of the day, you hire a manager. You've got holes in that squad. You go and fix them regardless of what it costs. You go and get it done. I don't want to hear any more of this. Oh, well, he won't be here in 18 months' time. He won't be here in 2 years. Because then that is, the club with no vision, no this, no that, No point in bringing here a guy here if that's your plan for him. I'm okay with them handing him a 2-year contract with a year to extend, if they do plan on extending it past that and this is their vision. But I don't want to hear it from the club where it's like, oh, well, he's gone in 18 months, so we're not sure whether to continue to throw any more money in it. Don't want to hear any more of that anymore.
Yeah, I am slightly worried by the fact that it isn't, initially a 3-year contract. It could be the fact that they are just thinking about it being just the cheaper option nowadays. And, it's if they ever did have to sort of sack Postecoglou because he is slightly unproven, if it did, let's say go poorly, it would mean that they wouldn't have to pay out as much, to get him gone. Another thing, though, is these days, how long do managers really last? Like, they do have to do quite well quite quickly. And I think you and I, as well as Sean, are going to, maybe even as we have thus far in the stream, we've shown Postecoglou a lot of faith. We played devil's advocate a lot, and also have acknowledged some of the skepticism, towards him at the same time. But he is ultimately going to live by his results. And it feels like nowadays managers don't get as much time as they would maybe 4 or 5 years ago because of sort of the excessive or just sort of kind of, maybe change in media culture. People just don't really expect you, to, get a year or two, to work, things and to be able to figure it out. Like, you kind of get less than that. You almost get maybe a few months, to try to make it work. And if it doesn't look very convincing, people already start questioning, your future and start questioning whether you're the right one to take it on. And that's also something I think Postecoglou is hopefully maybe well aware of. And also maybe something Spurs are going to have to be well aware of, that there will be a lot of times when people might try to pick on opportunities to question him. Even Ten Hag, right? Ten Hag had a pretty successful season with Man United, but when he had his big defeats, people, still pounced on him and still said, is he really, doing a good enough job? He, look at his record compared, to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in the past. And there was sort of a lot of times when people still did question him and still, pounced on any sort of slip up. So I don't know. That's something you also have to get ready for. I think in the Premier League that they do pounce on you when you do slip up at any stage as well. And will Spurs fans stick by, Ange Postecoglou when that happens?
Yeah, that's my huge worry when it comes to Postecoglou. Will fans stick by it? Will the board stick by it? But Sean, the 2-year contract as well. What's your thoughts on it? Like, I can understand where people are coming from, where it's sort of like it doesn't show that long-term vision, it doesn't show that long-term plan, and they are worried like me, where it could come a year down the line where they're like, oh, we're not sure whether to keep investing under this guy because we don't know whether he's going to be here after the next year. We've seen it happen under Antonio Conte and stuff like that. Does that concern you a little, or do you sort of accept like this is the way football's going with offer managers contracts that clubs protect themselves like that?
Yeah, I think the days of 5-year contracts for managers are probably over. I think that the average tenure now for Premier League managers is getting shorter and shorter every month. I think it's now like 17 months and 15 days or something. You've seen how many teams lost their manager this season, just finished. I think 13 teams, was it, or 12 teams in the Premier League changed manager at least once in the season. I just think that there's, from a club's perspective, it doesn't make sense. I think people get impatient. I think there's like the Netflix generation, the Amazon Prime, and Just Eats or whatever, Uber Eats. People want everything now. The fans are impatient. The cost of failure is, from a financial perspective, is significant. And I think that clubs need to be able to pivot quickly should things not work out. Now, that might go against everything I've been saying as far as that I do want us to give this guy time, but in terms of, the long-term contract, I don't see a problem. I don't. I think that it's 2 years. It will be 3 years. Should there be a successful first year? What you don't want is to go 5, like we did with the Pochettino contract, where you give him 5 years and then 3 months later he takes his foot off the gas a little bit and everything starts to kind of unravel, and then you're forced to pay this guy 30 million quid or whatever it is in compensation. So, for me personally, I don't see an issue with it. And I think it makes sense for both the manager and the club to be able to have, the kind of less expensive option should things not go the way that we hope they will. So, I don't see it as a problem at all.
Yeah.
And just quickly before we move on to Phil's question, or where Jack's going next, Blue Mountain says, does contracts really mean anything anymore, Sean? I think it's a fair point. Is it going down that direction?
Well, with managers, maybe not. With players, they certainly do. Obviously, because of the amortization of the player from an FFP perspective. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of different things to talk about there, but that's not the point. With regards managers, no, I think if everyone's happy, then there's no reason to not extend. As I say, having 1 year options, I take the argument. If you only have 1 year contracts, like what Postecoglou's done at Celtic prior to now, then you have to have a very, very good relationship between the manager and the owner, where they trust each other to not do each other over, to be open and communicative around what the intentions are. I think the 2-3 year deals is perfect. I don't think you need to commit to anything more than that. Things change so quickly in football that you need to be open to the idea of things going in a different direction, and you don't want to be tied to very expensive mistakes. So, like I say, 2 years with a year to extend, fine with me. Absolutely fine with me.
I think even Nuno Espirito Santo signed a decently healthy contract, right, when he was brought into Spurs, and we sacked him quite quickly, where it ended up being like, what was it, over 15 million that we had to pay
17 million pound we had to pay that guy for 2 months' work.
I mean, the guy could have bought like a whole beard business, a beard salon, multiple beard salons throughout the world, with that sort of payout. And he probably never even needed to manage ever again, with that sort of contract. So I'm kind of with you, Sean, that we shouldn't fall into that trap again, especially where a guy that we knew was already maybe a bit unproven, and perhaps somebody that people were already skeptical with in the first place was Nuno, and we gave him a big bumper contract for no reason at all, like considering, where all the risk was with him. So even though we have shown Ange, a lot of faith in this sort of, discussion thus far, I'm kind of with you. I don't think he needs to be signed on to some huge, gigantic bumper contract either. But at the same time, I also do get tired of the whole, is he actually going to be here in a year's time, sort of thing. That does get really exhausting. That's for sure. And so I could see why people do want, that extension. But go on to Phil's comment here, Dave.
Yeah, work away.
Phil saying, question for you guys. The style of play that Ange is going to bring to Spurs, attacking and high pressing. Will that high press be suited to the likes of a Harry Kane? Also, is it the right time now to cash in on Kane and invest in the squad? Lots of, sort of Harry Kane, kind of questions related to Ange Postecoglou. Another one I'm even thinking of, Phil, too, is will Ange Postecoglou have sort of the power, and does he have sort of really, if anything, the cojones to be able to show to Harry Kane, like, if you're not with me, you're gone? Does he have the power to say that to Daniel Levy and say, Harry Kane doesn't look like he's in it, doesn't look like, his attention is here, maybe his focus might be elsewhere? Would Postecoglou be able to be strong enough to say that to a certain Daniel Levy if he wanted to get him out of the club? That's something else to be asked. But what would you say to this, Sean? Like, Harry Kane suited to Postecoglou's system?
Probably, like, I think Harry Kane suits any system, right? He's too good to leave out of the system. But does he naturally, like, have the physical attributes to be able to
not a Kyogo.
To run?
Yeah,
he's not a Kyogo, and so I think that if Postecoglou does come in and Harry Kane says he wants to go, now that we've made the decision we have, then if there's a meaningful bid that comes in for more than 100 million quid, and if Harry Kane does want out, you probably take it, and then you go and get the players for the press. I say Harry Kane can fit into any squad, any system, anywhere in the world. He's good enough to be able to adapt. But can he actually, like, literally do the press to the same level as someone who can run for days? Probably not. Right. And you can make the same argument for a lot of the players in the top squad, but that's obviously for a conversation a different day. Can Harry Kane play in the Postecoglou system? Yes. Is it going to be easy on his legs to be able to run as much as we're going to ask him to under Postecoglou? Probably not as well. So, like I say, now that we know Postecoglou coming in is the guy, if Harry Kane says he doesn't want any part of it, I'm less opposed to selling him, letting him go abroad, because I feel like there are going to be certain players, a lot of players that we're going to need that we don't have to play the press the way that Postecoglou wants to play it. And that 120 million will come in handy for the budget for that. So,
I think when it comes to Harry Kane, I think it comes down to whether he's willing or not to do that pressing work, whether he thinks he's above that now and that other players should be sort of doing it for him. Because if that is the case, Ange Postecoglou will not accept that. Everyone has to be humble enough in his system to do the running. So, I think that's what it comes down to. Is Harry Kane willing to do that? Or does he want other people to do it and just give him the ball when they get it? A bit like Neymar at PSG. So I think Ange Postecoglou's decision will all come down to that. Can Harry Kane work in a high-pressing team? I think, of course, he can. Okay, yeah, a lot of people think it depends on pace, but it also depends on smart movements. It doesn't. You don't have to be really quick to, strategically block off passing lanes, this, that, and the other when you're pressing. There are other ways around it that you can fit Harry Kane into that. I'd also argue Harry Kane pressed more from the front this year and better than what Sonny did. I actually think the argument should be placed on Sonny. How many times that ball come down the left-hand side where he just didn't want to go and press? How many times were Harry Kane and Richarlison or Kulu pressing at times and the outball is on Son's side? I think that question more needs to be asked about Sonny than what it does about Kane, to be honest with you. And look, I just say, it's an even harder job for Ange Postecoglou without Harry Kane than what it is with Harry Kane. With his team, he's going to want a guy that's a lethal finisher like that. He's going to want someone that already has them amount of goals. And if Harry Kane stays, Kyogo stays at Chelsea or at Celtic, in my opinion. I don't think we sign him. If Kyogo comes to Tottenham, I think that signifies that Harry Kane is potentially on his way out the door. But I think, Harry Kane will fit into that pressing play because you can just set people up in smart positions. If you go back and look at a lot of the managers that we were linked with, Nagelsmann, Amorim, when you actually look into their presses, people stand in certain positions to show the ball out one side, and that's where, the press really gets on when the ball is shown out to that side you want. So there are other ways around to work it for me. Now, I heard an interesting debate the other day as well. Poor Alex on Savage Charity Stream got absolutely railroaded by everybody on the stream when it came to Harry Kane. But what I will say is, You know, the guy never spoke. If Alex never brought up Kasper Schmeichel from Leicester, look what happened when they tried to move on from Kasper Schmeichel. They had no one that could keep the goals out, and they got relegated. And he single-handedly is the biggest loss at Leicester. You know, when you have a player that's like that in the dressing room, when you have a goalkeeper that was at that level in the Premier League, and you lose someone like that and you don't replace it adequately, the troubles are there. And that's the problem with Leicester. They let Schmeichel go. They didn't have a goalkeeper that could keep the ball out of the back of the net fundamentally the way Schmeichel was for Leicester City. And he ended up getting relegated. You know, I'm not saying that Tottenham will end up getting relegated with Harry Kane, but once you're down and in around hovering above that zone, all it takes is a couple of bad results and you're down there. So for me, it makes sense to try and keep Harry Kane around and actually use him as a part of the rebuild going forward, because realistically, we want to be an attacking team that score goals. There's no point in replacing one of the best players in the world that are already doing that for you.
I feel like, Sean, there's maybe one final question I want to ask. Is just, can maybe Postecoglou actually, if he doesn't see that Harry Kane's focus is really at Spurs, can he really say to Daniel Levy and to Harry Kane, listen, you know, I don't want him here? If his, you know, like, does he have that sort of cojones? Does he have that sort of, you know, kind of balls to do that, you know, to stand up to everybody's favorite, to stand up to Dave's, you know, favorite? He'd be standing up to David Harris right here. You know, he'd be telling him, you know, I'm selling your big man. So can Postecoglou do that?
Yeah, you have to, right? If you have to let the manager manage, you know.
Yeah.
When you watch that Tim Sherwood interview, where he said that Daniel Levy tried to force him to play, I forget the player now, top of my head, gone blank. Saldado, that's it. Yeah, because he wanted, you know, if that story's true, for what it's worth, it might be true, but Tim Sherwood talks a hell of a lot of nonsense. He lies a lot. Like, he's always contradicting himself in things he says in one interview, then in something different elsewhere. But if it's true, then Daniel Levy is shameful for getting involved in saying that sort of thing. And you'd hope that you'd hope a manager has to have the freedom to do what he wants and play the players that he wants. If Harry Kane not running, not making the effort, not doing that, I can't imagine that would happen anyway. But if he was to not do that, sorry, is my internet going again, guys?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, I can't imagine Harry Kane would ever sort of down tools like that. But if he did, and Ange Postecoglou said, all right, well, then he's got to come out of the team. Yeah. And if there was pushback from the owner or whatever else, then he's not really a manager, is he? He's just a lame duck, and you can't have that. So, like, if we're going to back Ange, that means trusting him in whatever he wants to do for the time he's at the club, and I will support it. I might challenge it, I might critique it, but ultimately, I will have no problem with the idea of him doing what he thinks is necessary. If he makes tough decisions and it ends up like backfiring and costing us points, or we end up being terrible, then obviously the consequences of that are that it didn't work out and we move on to the next one. But I don't think any of that stuff will happen. Harry Kane's a consummate professional. If he's playing for Tottenham next season, he will do whatever he's asked of him, I would imagine. You know,
and people also make this argument: is Ange enough to keep Harry Kane around and convince him? Look, I can't sit here and say, 100% he is. But the difference between Nuno and Ange Postecoglou is, Nuno only spoke to Harry Kane once on the first day and gave him the cold shoulder for the rest of the time. Whereas Ange Postecoglou won't do that. Ange Postecoglou will come in and he will speak to Kane. He speaks to everybody in the squad. He gets to know them on a personal level. He gets to know them about their family and everything. If you listen to a lot of the interviews by Celtic players there the other day, they were talking about how good the environment is for them and their families and stuff like that. And, Harry Kane is a family man. So Ange Postecoglou would bring that environment around. I think potentially there is a chance that would be able to keep Harry Kane. And I know a lot of people say, oh, but Dave, Ten Hag had to make that decision at United with Ronaldo. Complete different conversation. Because the conversation around Ronaldo was he past it? Could he do what Ten Hag wanted him to do? He was on the downslide. Harry Kane is in the prime of his career. So that conversation is completely different. You're not talking about a player on the side, on the decline. You're talking about one of the best players in the world in his position, in the height of his career. And if he's good enough for Real Madrid, then it doesn't make sense that we should consider any manager coming in here that might want to get rid of Harry Kane right now. If it is a case that Harry Kane doesn't want to nail down and do the tactics, fine, I can accept that decision having to be made.
Right.
But anything outside of that, I think the argument is absolutely nonsense, purely because you're talking about the best player in the world in that position in his prime, and not like Ronaldo, a player on the decline who you had to especially cater to because of his declining abilities.
Shawnee, I know we got to let you go, my friend. Thank you for your service today. And Ange Postecoglou is going to be on your mind for the rest of this evening, I imagine. Get the barbecues out.
What's coming up on
the
It's
channel?
Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou. Spurs Talk Show is where you can find me, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, get over there. I'm close to 8K now. So subscribe to these wonderful guys. Get them to 10K. And if you can help me get to 8, that would be awesome as well. Jack, Dave, I love you guys. I will see you all on the next one.
Just lads, you're eating through them subscribers. Wasn't that like 2 weeks ago or a week ago? You're at like 700.
Yeah, 7K. Yeah, I think there's I was 7K at 2.5 weeks ago. Yeah, so it's going crazy with the subs right now.
Fair play. Well, it's a reflection of your work, Shawnee. So keep it up, brother.
Keep climbing, baby. Keep climbing, baby. Alrighty, Shawnee, get the Barbies out. We'll see you later, buddy.
See you, my man. Okay, everybody, you want to be a part of the growing trend on YouTube, which is Spurs Talk Show. Get over there, click that link, smash that subscribe button on Sean's great channel. But Jack, have we anything else we want to discuss before we end off? Or
we kind of were already discussing sort of the Harry Kane things. We're already maybe the last points, on our kind of real discussion sheet. Maybe one question didn't maybe get enough attention that maybe we could just quickly end off on. And anybody that wants to answer this, feel free to put it in the chat down below, please, for us. Does it maybe bother you that Ange doesn't exactly have a plan B, Dave, considering Antonio Conte, right, was criticized for sort of the same thing? And Ange Postecoglou is quite proud of the fact that he doesn't have a plan B. He's just sort of like, do plan A better. Don't concede to your style of play. Don't, bow down to anybody. A lot of people like that, by the sounds of things. But Antonio Conte, to a degree, was quite similar, with his philosophy and everything. So what do you make to that?
Look, I don't like this plan B nonsense, to be honest with you, Jack. Plan B for me is something that's completely different to what you come into the club to set up. It's something that counteracts what you originally, your original idea. And for me, I don't like it. If you can't execute plan A, then you've got serious problems. That automatically tells you need to go into the transfer market, this, that, and the other. So for me, I like it that his plan B is do plan A better, because once you start focusing on plan A and going with plan B, it's only a matter of time before you end up being sacked. And that's just the harsh reality of it. Once you change drastically like that, you failed. And you're going to end up carrying the sack. And that also shows that your players don't respect you. The fact that you have to keep changing up, that they just won't do what you're asking them to do. And that also means your coaching staff is failing because they can't get through to them on the coaching pitch. So for me, once you do that, you may as well just change manager anyway, because that's exactly what's going to happen, whether you delay the process or do it straight away. For me, at Tottenham, it is about executing plan A, and we should be a team where teams are more worried about what we have to offer than what they have to offer us in my regard. So for me, I like Ange's style. I don't like, for me, it's not like we're talking like this guy doesn't have any, anything else but the one style. But, you constantly hear the guy talking about having to make little tweaks. Now, he's never going to come out and tell you exactly what they are, because he's not stupid. He's not going to give the opposition their homework on a plate like that. He's never going to do it. But he will adapt. He'll have little tweaks. Although the principles and what he asks of the players will, the hard work, constantly moving this, that, and the other, that will always fundamentally be there. But he can change it up tactically in games if needed. He can't change formation in games if needed. But when he talks about his attacking philosophy and everything else not changing, good. That's what I want at Tottenham. If I want a team that goes out there and sets off to an attack, and okay, if the first 10 minutes it's not working, well, I don't want to resort to sitting in and containing them. No, you continue to play the same way. Continue to play within your beliefs, within your tactics, and eventually that will prevail. And the only way by being a team that's very good at that and implementing it from the very off in every single game and making it really work is by going through hard times like that without changing. And for me, that's what we need at Tottenham. Can't keep having managers bowing down and trying to, compensate for Eric Dyer's weaknesses or Sanchez's weaknesses or this player's weaknesses or that player's weaknesses. You can no longer have a manager trying to second guess what these guys are going to do because they're completely unpredictable. For me, this is the way we're playing. If you don't like it, get the fuck out. And he'll do that as soon as he walks in that door.
I think a lot of people feel like Sebas do, right? Is that even if Conte didn't have a plan B, they feel like the fact that Postecoglou just plays a very different style of play and his, sort of ethos about how he likes football to be played is very contrary to the likes of an Antonio Conte. So people feel like if you aren't going to have any sort of plan B, you might as well sort of be maybe on Postecoglou's side of it, which is sort of just go after them, full throttle and don't concede, and don't sort of think about the opposition, think about yourselves and how you can hurt them instead of how they can hurt you, sort of type of way of thinking. And I can see why a lot of fans might be, if you're not going to have a plan B, they'd be okay with it being the other way around, right? Where you just kind of go after them no matter who you're up against. And it's definitely a fighter's mentality. That's for sure, Sebas. That's for sure. And it's definitely the one where you would say people just sort of go after it. And that's what a lot of Spurs fans always want to see us do, is just go after it no matter what, sort of opposition we're coming up against here.
Like
DJ Samuel. Yeah.
Like, we can sit here and, ask for these plan Bs. But Conte had, he changed formation a couple of times. You'd say that's a plan B. It never worked. Stellini changed from a back five to a back four, got slapped up against Newcastle and was out the door. Because the players will, once you see that happening, it shows you that no one's listening to you. So for me, once you start changing, you're out the door. Because once you start losing belief in yourself and what you're doing, everyone else will stop believing in you as well, and as a knock-on effect. So for me, I like the fact that he's just like, look, it's attacking, and that's the way it is. I'm not changing to sit back and defend against anybody. I'm not doing it. I like that. And many fans also wanted that when we had Conte and Jose in charge. So yeah, I don't see the problem.
DJ Samuel, member for 8 months. Flat Cap member says, amazing work as always, lads. It's my birthday in 7 days. Big up, DJ, my man. It's my birthday month as well. It's my missus's birthday month. It's a busy one for June. It's actually a very expensive month for the likes of me, when June arrives. But big up, DJ, and hopefully you get maybe a transfer. I know you've already gotten Postecoglou nice and early before the birthday, so you don't have to worry about that, come the big day. But hopefully you can get a transfer in, maybe nice and early for you as well. Something to think about in that regard. But appreciate your support over the 8 months, DJ. I feel like it's been a lot longer than that, but you've been with us in the Harris Army for a long time. And, you're an absolute just, Spurs, man, through and through. And we appreciate you sticking with us, throughout the tough times of this football club. Pick yourself up, DJ.
Well, today is Monday. So next Monday when we're on live, I'll give you your big happy birthday. I will not forget. I didn't forget, Moondog's birthday this week. I didn't forget Paul Hotspur's birthday this week. So, we'll make sure that you get your big happy birthday, my man. And hopefully you have a great time, brother. Big up, DJ.
And William Kelly, now member for 21 months, as a fan show member. Big up, William Kelly, says Ange does have a plan. Becoming 60 minutes, he brings on more. When it comes to 60 minutes, he brings on more attacking players to really finish off the opposition. So he's saying he does have a plan B, actually. And his plan B is sort of to throw on even more attacking players around the 60th minute.
Yeah, so I think that's more so people say, well, players can't do that relentlessly for 90 minutes. Well, what Ange does do is in the second half, he normally uses all 5 subs to refreshen it. So therefore, that intensity, that relentlessness in the press, people moving off the ball, it doesn't really relent up at any stage, because the minute he starts seeing that in a player, he'll hold him off and bring another guy on just to keep that energy. So that's what William is alluding to there. And he's, he actually done it at the cup final at the weekend. They were playing against a team that set all 11 men very, very deep behind the ball. Hard to break down at times, but Celtic just kept on going. And once they did break them down, and maybe things were starting to slacken off a little, he made a couple of impact changes, and they went on and scored another couple of goals to really put the game to bed. So that's what William Kelly is alluding to. Big up, William. Up for your keeping well. He's super excited, by the way.
Love that. I bet plenty are. The Ange Army is strong, and hopefully you recognize that the Harris Army is in full support of the Ange Army. Maybe we can come together here, everybody. But I think we'll leave you there. We do have a fan show later, everybody, for those that do want to come on and have their say quickly on the likes of this Ange news, and as well to just sort of get us started into the summer. What are your thoughts, ahead of this appointment? What sort of questions do you have? What sort of things are you happy about, looking forward to? And what sort of reservations do you have? All those sort of good answers, all those sort of good questions, everybody. So join us for the fan show later, and hit the like button, please, on the way out if you haven't already, everybody. And really good to see you, so many of you in here today. And like Dave said, so close to the 10K. So if you have any goldfish or anything out there that maybe have been a bit reluctant, to hit the subscribe, maybe push them to do so. If you have maybe, any friends or anybody that, out in the sort of Spurs community that need to get in the Spurs YouTube, have them, take a look at the channel, everybody. Appreciate
Look, we're 27 away as it stands. If you want Jack to sit there with a nice, ice-cold Australian beer tonight, let's get him that 10K subscribers. Guys, I want to say quickly before we end off, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone for chiming in with your points, getting your opinions across. I've really enjoyed them. It's good to see so many across the chat. And if you want to have more of a say, make sure you line up and get on that fan show tonight. I will say to people, please try and get in there early tonight, because I can literally only go for about 2 hours, and then I have to go and pack because I'm up really early in the morning to sort of head away for a week. So please get on and have your say. And if you haven't already, grab that fan show membership so that you can get on and have your say, guys. And thank you all for the support all season long and into this new era of Ange Postecoglou. And hopefully it works out well for us. We'll see you back here in just over an hour's time or so. As always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
In Ange Postecoglou, we trust.
And the
We've got
big Ange, we trust, baby.
Yeah, we can do it
Happy
again.
clapping again, Tequila. Pick yourself up, my man. We'll be seeing you later, everybody.
See you all soon. Come on, you Spurs.